That is totally fine. Yeah, I think that was just out of the excitement for it all, especially because we were building up to the TF1 discussion. Let me share this link really quick here. But yeah, I don't know how much of yours you're gonna want to repeat from scratch because you summarized it in your like I don't know how much of yours is gonna be just go watch the video, you know what I mean? Or if it's gonna be like for an audience that you presume has not seen that video. Mhm. Yeah, there are no playable Decepticons, much like in the Armada game. Um, I think I'm good to go ahead and start. So do you want me to go ahead and start first? Okay. So Transformers the movie from 1986. So I mentioned in my the Transformers video game retrospective series, starting with the first video, the Armada video, that a lot of G1 fans put TF86 on a pedestal as one of the best things the franchise has going for it. And I do agree, but I think one of the things that has sort of held back um Michelle's in chat saying that she can only hear me but she can't hear you. Let me wait and see here. Yeah, this opening is straight out of an episode of G1. Like it feels right at home as an episode of G1. Yeah, it doesn't have the movable the P-38 barrel. Oh, yeah, yeah, he's hauling ass. He's going like crazy. But can we confirm that both of us can be heard? That would be super weird if I could be heard and not you though, because you would be recording your desktop audio for Discord, right? Okay, yeah, Michelle says she can only still hear me. I have hijacked the stream. It is all mine.
Okay, that should do it now. Uh, no, I just had the wrong microphone set to it. Sometimes whenever I unplug the mic, it unsyncs itself from Streamlabs, so I have to choose that setting again. I keep forgetting about that. All right, so this is Metal Gear Rising plus Transformers.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yes, back to.
can anyone in chat confirm that Caleb can be heard now?
Yep, Sir Isaac says he can hear me now, so
Okay.
that
Great.
should be good. All right.
All right. With that out of the way, I'm going to continue my summary of the movie.
Yes, you
Um,
said one of the best things that Transformers has ever done. So,
yeah, it's the thing that all the fans put on a pedestal, and I think that like any nostalgic nerd franchise, people it just they constantly want to pay homage to the thing that fans appreciate and respect the most. So, and you mentioned this in the video where there are so many references to there are so many references to this movie all throughout Transformers media for decades to come afterwards. And you mentioned if you showcased a few of them in the video, but there were even more, like in the whole like why throw away your life so recklessly? That's a question you should ask yourself, Megatron. That's in Armada, like line for line as well. And there's um, yeah, one shall stand, one shall fall. There is no matter the cost, till all are one, light or darkest hour. Um, there is I have nothing but contempt for this court. Spare me this mockery of justice. Like all of those lines are just like they love paying homage to that. And even in Fall of Cybertron, like it was while doing the Fall of Cybertron video and being like, oh, this was made lovingly by Transformers fans that really understood the source material. And then juxtaposing that with going and seeing Transformers 1 in theaters that was finally doing its own thing and not relying so much on references, because Fall of Cybertron has them all over the place, like even like Megatron quote unquote dying and Starscream having a coronation that the newly revived Megatron has to go and interrupt. Like it's literally ripped straight from the movie, even with the line "Coronation Starscream, this is bad comedy," yada yada. So the where this movie exists like culturally for the fans is super interesting to me, because it was the thing that they were always paying homage to. At least with the American-made stuff, for sure. The Japanese stuff was doing its own thing for a while, but then you have, I think we finally reached this like event horizon where people got tired of the pandering, the nostalgia pandering, and the references, and then TF1 was like finally feeling like something new, because I heard a lot of people criticize the Netflix War for Cybertron animated series for playing it too safe and like having bad writing that misunderstood the characters. And I have not watched that series, and I probably should. But so I guess that's like one of my big things about this movie is like where it kind of exists culturally in the fan base and the impact that it had on the rest of the franchise. And you definitely notated that in your review. But I also kind of want to talk about the production of this movie a little bit and some of the background stuff. So this movie does have a American writer and director, I want to say, but it was actually commissioned out to Toei Animation, and so it was parts of it were made in Japan, and it was, as you pointed out, as a lot of people know, it was this sort of big toy commercial of let's phase out the previous toy line to bring in the new one. And thankfully the writers actually did care about the idea of introducing death into the story and making it a meaningful part of the story, and it actually having some weight and some impact. But they actually had no clue that killing off Optimus Prime was going to have the cultural impact that it did. They thought that it would be as mundane as any other character. They didn't think that there would be like protests and people walking out of the theater crying and stuff like that. And they had no idea that they had created a cultural icon. and so they thought that killing him would be, it would be an emotional gut punch in the context of the movie, but they had no idea the gravity of what they were committing to doing. But I almost feel like because they killed Optimus Prime is how he became a cultural icon. Do you agree?
Yeah, I was waiting to talk because we said we were going to take turns.
Yeah, I'll let you
Yes.
respond to this point real quick.
This I do kind of agree. It's like I don't want to say it gives him necessarily like a savior complex like Jesus Christ or anything, but that's the most immediate example I could think of to where like a figure would gain such similar significance like after he's gone or after his death and then later resurrection. But I do agree that it. How do I want to put this? It's like I said in the video, no one in the cartoon ever actually permanently died. Like, no one... like, there was never permadeath. So, and even when we had, like, great episodes in the first season, like, War Dawn? No, not War Dawn. What was it? Divide and Conquer, where Optimus is basically on his deathbed for the entire episode and only comes back at the very last second. Like, the fans were waiting for that to happen in the movie.
Real quick, this is trying to teach you to use your dodge right here.
Oh, right. Oh yeah, the buzzsaw door. Yeah.
Yeah, it's trying to get you to use your dodge.
Yeah, you're a couple.
Dodge the saw blade.
Yeah, I got it. You're a couple seconds behind me on the watching the stream. I'm already past that and fighting the Decepticon cars. I do agree that to get to the point, I do agree that Optimus's death did make him more endeared because it's one of those sometimes you don't appreciate it until it's gone kind of things. And now the kids are like, well, who's going to lead the Autobots now? Space Winnebago over here?
Yeah, and I just think that he would have already been a well-beloved and remembered character regardless, and a lot of that comes down to the charm of Peter Cullen's portrayal of him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But specifically him dying, I feel like, is what ironically immortalized him. And I think the cultural legacy around them choosing to kill him and then the backlash to that and how that choice impacted the rest of the G1 series, and of course them bringing him back later. And again, it's like other pieces of Transformers media love to borrow that and like to see Prime martyr himself to try to get a reaction out of the fans. And Revenge of the Fallen did it, Armada did it,
Transformers Animated did it, Beast Wars did it. Like
none of those were permanent, if I recall correctly. But
and like even Beast Wars even made a joke about it. Oh, you Optimuses love to sacrifice yourselves, don't you?
Yeah.
And hello, Master Chief. Welcome to the chat.
But
ouch.
I wanna talk about the cast a little bit. So I kind of talked a little bit about the behind the scenes production a little bit there, but I want to talk about the cast. So I think this movie has a really interesting cast of voice actors. You have Judd Nelson as Hot Rod, which is not only the only celebrity I can think of that has my middle name for a first name, but also is like I think he's pretty charismatic as Hot Rod. And watching this with my wife and our best friend on New Year's Eve as their first viewing of it, having zero context, they didn't even know who Hot Rod was before we watched the movie.
Right.
They both walked away being like, I like him. He's a fun character. He's a fun protagonist who is fun and charismatic, and they both enjoyed his time on screen. And Ultra Magnus is played by Robert Stack, who is the guy who was like, tonight on Unsolved Mysteries, like that guy.
Yes.
And I think that he is almost too good for Ultra Magnus. Like he's a legend, and the fact that they picked him for that role was definitely very appropriate because he does have that very commanding presence with his voice.
So can I ask you a question on that regard then?
Yeah.
You said Robert Stack's too good for Ultra Magnus. I'm sure you're going to get to it. Then what's your take on Orson Welles as Unicron?
Oh, well, let's go ahead and segue right into that. So here's the thing about Orson Welles as Unicron. So because you mentioned in your video that he doesn't sound like how you would expect Orson Welles to sound, which does result in one of my favorite jokes in the video, which is the World of Worlds broadcast thing. That.
Yeah, that was mostly a joke. That was just me trying to make that reference because I actually
I like that joke. It made me laugh.
I don't know Orson Welles for anything else other than Transformers and War of the Worlds. That's all I know. So.
Oh well, you should watch. I mean, I think if anybody knows Orson Welles for anything, it would be Citizen Kane. But the whole thing about him not sounding like how you think he would sound. There's more to it than just the fact that he was old
and dying.
They actually went on record in the behind the scenes and said that so not only was Orson Welles old, but he was also extremely overweight and out of shape, and he was a bit of a rampant alcoholic in this point in his career.
Yeah.
And was not really able to do any major roles, and I think he had a bunch of unpaid debt and stuff. And so he was doing like wine commercials half sober, and so the idea that he had a major film role was kind of a big deal for him, and he was willing to do the stupid cartoon Planet thing because he needed a paycheck. But the director and producer, there was an interview with them on, I think, one of the old DVD releases of the movie, where they're like, yeah, Orson Welles comes into the booth and he's like, I understand I'm playing a whole planet. And I thought that was first of all intimidating because they're sitting there with this like film legend, but also is kind of just like, don't say anything about his weight, don't say anything about his weight, don't say anything about his weight.
Yeah, I think that was on the 20th anniversary DVD. That's the version that I have. So
yeah, and so the irony of Orson Welles playing a whole planet was not lost on them. But Orson Welles also said in like a newspaper interview or something like that after recording for the film, like what he was playing, and he was very cynical about the whole thing, where he was like, it's some damn robot toy commercial where I play a planet or whatever, and he sounds like very unenthused about the whole thing. But I kind of chalked it up to him being, he's old and cynical and was probably a bit pretentious in his age. He whether you like him or not, was very influential to sort of forming the language of cinema that we know of today, and like how it really challenged the way that narratives are thought of. So I guess he gets to get away with being a little bit pretentious. But
yeah,
the thing about how he sounds as Unicron is because they actually had to do a lot of effects work to his voice. He did not, they couldn't get a good line out of him because he was so out of shape. And so the reason why he sounds the way he does in the final movie is because there's a lot of like synthesizing and post work done with his voice.
Yeah, and I think they had to do the same thing for James Earl Jones in the Lion King remake, just because he's reached that age to where he is not in his prime anymore. No pun intended, so just talking Transformers, but similar thing. But yes,
I wouldn't be surprised. And trying to think of who else is noteworthy here. So it's really funny. Again, we have Frank Welker as Megatron, who gets phased out for Leonard Nimoy as Galvatron. But after the film, they did not want to pay a lot of these Hollywood actors to continue their roles for the TV show.
Of course.
So Frank Welker returns to play Galvatron in the show, and we get a very different Galvatron performance.
I would argue a terrible Galvatron performance. I would prefer to use his Megatron voice for that. Like,
oh yeah, and that goes into like this aspects of the story that I'm sure we'll get into, where Galvatron completely loses his mind after the events of the movie and does not live up to the legacy of original G1 Megatron, but that's a whole other thing. But Frank Welker was primarily in the 80s an incredibly prolific voice actor who would do a lot of really creative things. And I think if I'm not mistaken, he does some of the Junkion voices.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, because he's not Wreck-Gar, because that's Eric Idle.
Yes.
But he basically figured out how to do the whole "weird sound like we're talking through a blender" thingy, like, and he could just do that with his voice, and it was really impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, Frank Welker, legendary voice actor. Glad to see he's still around and doing stuff to this day.
Yeah, and his work on G1 goes far and beyond just his role as Megatron, and I think that it's actually enormously underrated to me how much voice work he did and how creative he was with his voice. I think that's about it in terms of like celebrity voice work. Funny enough, I forgot that Weird Al voiced Wreck-Gar in that one episode of Animated until I saw your clip in your review, but I did remember that Judd Nelson did return to play Rodimus in Animated and in like Titan's Return and Power of the Primes and all that, which I think is pretty cool.
No, that I didn't know, so that's cool.
Yeah, and so it's literally G1 Hot Rod coming back for later incarnations of Rodimus.
Yeah. Susan Blue, what else has she done besides Transformers?
I'm gonna find out right now.
She was also a screenwriter, isn't she? Like, doesn't she also write in addition to act?
I'm not sure, but we're gonna find out right now. We're doing a little bit of behind-the-scenes Googling. All
right, so while you're doing that, I'm gonna try to catch up chat. Yeah, Devastator was utterly devastating me. But I will ask for a little bit of slack. This is my first time playing this game, and I can't really hear the audio at the moment, and I am blocked by a wind turbine thing. So Isaac said, add how Unicron sounded makes more uninterested in human. Oh yeah, I agree. I got stuff I want to say about Unicron as a character when we get there. The video he's referencing is one of my early review videos that I did about 5 years ago. And I talked about Transformers 86, and I just wanted him to check on that because I do make some points in that video. I didn't want to have the full video or the full stream here just being me going, go watch my video. I just wanted him to refreshen up on that because he's seen it before, because we kind of monitor each other's content. It was really just a refresher kind of deal because I've already talked about this, and we've already talked about the movie like independently at times. Mystery Object. Outside of like making videos, we've talked about it together before, so it's just a brief refresher.
So apparently, Susan Blue is a voice actor and a voice director.
Ah, yes.
So she was director of ADR on a lot of cartoons. Oh my fucking god, dude! I wish I could unknow the thing that I now know. I'm going to subject you to this knowledge as well.
You're not the only one cursed with knowledge.
Her and Robert Stack worked together on another project later in their career, and you're never going to guess what it is.
Live action film?
No, it's the cartoon.
Well,
I guess it is. Yeah, is the legendary classic that everybody remembers, and I'm not going to trigger anybody's PTSD when I bring it up. It's the show But Ugly Martians.
I had forgotten about that until you mentioned it, and now
I did too.
And now I can hear the theme song on loop. It'll never go away.
I forgot that this show was terrible. But apparently, her and Robert Stack were both on it, which is funny because that was like right before Robert Stack passed away in 2003. Anyway, the last person on the cast that I want to talk about is actually Chris Latta, the voice of Starscream. Obviously the same role. All the cartoon voice actors were still there, but Chris Latta, aside from being on almost every single 80s cartoon, including obviously he was
Cobra Commander.
He was Cobra Commander in G.I. Joe, but he was also on The Real Ghostbusters. He was also in the English dub for some of very, very early anime adaptations. So he was one of the English voices in the 1979 adaptation of Battleship Yamato. But he was a stand-up comedian, and he actually apparently won some awards for his stand-up comedy. And so I've always kind of thought that Galvatron saying "this is bad comedy" to Starscream is a direct reference to that, but I guess we'll never know. But yeah, he's really cool. He was only 44 when he passed away in the early 90s, which is a huge shame. But I think he's really cool. He apparently was on some episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation and Seinfeld, which is interesting. So I'm curious
Really?
to go back and see him in some live action stuff. But he's I think he brings a Starscream's character to life. And then again, when my wife and our friend watched the 86 movie, the only thing they're familiar with, or the only thing that Michelle specifically was familiar with Starscream is Sam Riegel as Starscream in my videos about War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron.
Yeah.
And I've always said that Sam Riegel's portrayal is pretty faithful to G1 in its own way. Like, he's doing his own thing, but he's also very much trying to do a Starscream impression. And then she's also heard, Steve Buscemi as Starscream in TF1. And so she was surprised that he was as shrill as he is in G1. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's just how he sounds. And but to kind of talk a little bit more about like the story and all that, there was definitely some stuff that we noticed on this particular viewing that we didn't notice before, such as we were watching it with the same friend we went and saw TF1 in theaters with, who I've discovered is a massive Transformers fan, and I've had to like keep my power level in check because she was like nerding out about stuff that I had no clue that she was going to even know about, yet alone like start quizzing me on. But she was a delight, and so it was really, really fun to watch this with her because she had never seen it before. And so she recognizes all of these characters, but did not know like really broadly what happens in this movie, aside from probably some of the more iconic bits. So like at the very beginning, you have Megatron and the other Decepticons boarding the Autobot ship headed towards Autobot City on Earth, and she's like, "Oh my God, Ratchet! Ratchet's dead!" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's dead," and like stuff like that, and or like how they killed Wheeljack basically off screen.
Yeah, my favorite Autobot, who wasn't a Dinobot, dead off screen. Still angry about it.
And you get like one frame to see his dead body laying there, and then Michelle was very surprised to see that Starscream in the coronation scene where he has the crown and the cape, that was so short-lived because it's so iconic in like fan art and other depictions. Like
how many figures have they made of that? Like
at least two. I own two different ones where there's actually at least three iterations of Starscream where he has the crown. And so they love to reference that, but in the film it's like 30 seconds. And she was like, I can't believe he's dead already. Like, he just now put the stupid crown on. But in the movie that's a big punchline where it's like this is 2 seasons of the rivalry built up between him and Megatron summarized in just a minute, where he thinks he finally got one up on Megatron and is like, haha, idiot. You went and got hurt in a fight, and now I'm going to leave you for dead floating in the vacuum of space. And he's like, all right, there's absolutely nobody who can stand in my way. I am officially the leader of the Decepticons. That idiot Megatron is finally out of my way. What's that on the horizon? And I also just think that, people have commented on this before, that this movie is really hardcore and really violent. Some of the deaths are absolutely fucking gnarly, and if these characters were not robots, this would be like absolutely just disgusting how some of these characters die. Prowl in particular, with like the smoke coming out of his mouth, and his eyes busting out of his head.
Yeah,
like, that's horrifying. And then Starscream as well, like literally crumbling to dust is like, it's really hardcore, and I really think that they did a really good job with that. And I'm trying to think of what else. I made the case, and I think a lot of people do, that when people talk about this movie, really what they are nostalgic for and what they're remembering is about the first 40 minutes. Pretty much from the opening text crawl to the moment that Galvatron vaporizes Starscream is what you remember, and it's what you've seen like clips on YouTube of a billion times as a kid, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But beyond that, nobody really remembers this movie up until the finale. And a lot of people do say, they're like, I think the movie has a weak third act. It kind of goes off the rails. Like, they didn't know what else to do with the story beyond that point. And some of the movie exclusive designs and the new characters they introduced, like the Sharkticons and the Quintessons and everything, is like, these are some very goofy designs that look like they would be better suited in a different 80s piece of media. Like, they look like they came from like He-Man or something like that. And
I will counter that point by saying we had other like really off the wall episodes of the cartoon, especially in season 2 when you had like episodes with Defcon, the Autobot bounty hunter. You saw alien robots that weren't Autobots and Decepticons that looked really weird. I really don't think.
I just mean like specific aspects of their aesthetic, like the mustaches and everything, and the weird head crown things. Like, it very much looks like characters that that come out of like something like He-Man is what it reminds me of. And I think that was just like a aesthetic pivot, and I think that might have been, you know, more Americanized designs, whereas some of the Transformers designs themselves are, you know, because they borrowed from
Right, Takara Tomy and all that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I can understand that. This is when they started actually making Transformers designs for Transformers and not just borrowing from another toy. So that that makes sense.
They're not Japanese mecha super robot characters being just imported. They're trying to do their own thing. So they have a very different aesthetic to them. But I think that in defense of the later parts of the movie, I do think that of course I love all the music and everything. Even aside from the licensed music, which though as far as the licensed music goes, this movie might as well be a sing-along as far as I'm concerned, because I love the 80s hair metal so much. But even the score, which I have the CD soundtrack for the score, but not the licensed music.
Oh yeah, Vince DiCola is a masterpiece. Or he is a master at his craft.
It has this very ethereal, mysterious vibe to it, and that really resonated with our audience. And my wife and our two friends that watched it on New Year's, they really liked the score as well, and they were like, oh, this has a really interesting sound to it. Like, Unicron's theme is iconic, and some of the themes that play on certain planets and all that.
Yes.
And so another thing I like about you know, you mentioned this in your video as well, about how much this movie like borrows aesthetically from other 80s media, and we had a separate conversation about how much it is just like ripping off Star Wars in a lot of instances.
Yeah.
Where you know, we talked about, it's like, you know, Hot Rod goes through the same archetypical hero's journey that a character like Luke Skywalker would, you know, discovering his magical destiny through the magical Force MacGuffin thing. And then, you know, RC literally has like the Leia hair buns, and Unicron is just the Death Star, and you even have like a master apprentice situation with the villains. We had a whole sidebar about that, but
you got lightsabers in the movie.
Yeah, like Hot Rod training with the
lightsaber on the ship.
Yeah, training with like the dummy training bot on the ship.
Yeah.
Which was like just a little throwaway scene, but it's clearly a Star Wars reference. And other 80s media, I know you said that the hoverboard is like a Back to the Future reference, but I don't think it's necessarily explicitly a Back to the Future reference, but it is like just a general sci-fi reference.
Yeah.
And then the Junk Planet is just Mad Max.
Yes,
and,
indeed.
It's just the Road Warrior, and this was not lost on our audience who was watching it. But the thing that they pointed out that was really cool is the idea of like all of the Junkions or whatever are they all turn into these motorcycles, and they can just ride each other because they're all basically the same size. And it just works so well, and like the visuals and the choreography of them, like they get knocked back, and so like the other guy transforms, and the guy who got knocked off then rides him, and it's like, it's just such a cool aesthetic choice. And as far as, you know, Road Warrior knockoffs in the 80s, of which there were numerous ones, this it was cool. Like I like the aesthetic of the Junk Planet, even though the Weird Al music number is like a little cringe, and I'm kind of just like waiting for it to be over.
Nah, that's where we hard disagree.
Our friend who is the established Transformers fan watching this for the first time, it's really funny because she was familiar enough with Weird Al to know this song but not know that it was from this movie. And I thought that was great because I mentioned there was going to be a Weird Al song, and she's like, "Ooh, is it this one? Is it this one?" And I'm like, "No, it's not any of the parody songs. Like, it's an original song." And then she finally heard it when it comes up in the movie.
On a note for that scene, I personally think that the song is diegetic. Because the Junkians talk TV and they get broadcasts, I fully believe Retgar is blasting that through his motorcycle speaker while they're chasing the Autobots.
Oh, you know what? I'll accept that.
Especially since the song abruptly cuts when Daniel like smacks him on the head with that I-beam, it just stops right there.
Yeah. So, and again, in terms of the story, you know, like I said, I think a lot of people say it has a pretty weak third act or whatever, but the one of the things that, again, our audience of first time watchers said, and Michelle pointed out, where she was like, she was like, I don't know how they're going to get out of this situation. Like, things keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse for our protagonists, and the stakes keep going up and up and up and up and up. And I do think that that is, like, to the movie's credit, that is, it does continue to build tension with, like, everything keeps getting worse and worse and worse, where, like, many Autobots have died, Optimus dies, the survivors get split up, and they lose their ships, Cuff almost gets killed, you have Ultra Magnus getting blown up into pieces, and they lose the Matrix to Galvatron, and so it's like, everything just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and you're like, how are they possibly going to wrap all this up in this short amount of runtime that's left? And some people would probably find it to be a bit cheap and a bit rushed to have the conflict with Unicron resolved so quickly, and for the Matrix to be this like magical MacGuffin kind of thing. But I have made the case that I don't really feel like the Matrix of Leadership was ever meant to be like a weapon, so to speak. I always felt like it was meant to be, you know, just this symbol of leadership kind of thing, and this symbol of hope. But he does, in fact, use it as a weapon in the end to beat Unicron. And my wife really liked that, where she was like, I like the Studio Trigger Gurren Lagann-esque, like, we found the willpower and the determination within ourselves to just wrap it all up, you know, in like, we found the willpower within us to beat everything against all odds, and like, so the conflict being resolved with Unicron so abruptly like that, like, didn't feel rushed to her. It just felt really, really awesome, you know?
Yes.
And I don't think there's anything else I really had to say about this. You know, of course I've seen this movie numerous times, where my initial experience, I want to quickly address a comment in chat really quick here. So David Eddles is saying, do we ever see the Transformers combine with each other? So aside from Jasalt combiners like Devastator, which were made up of 5 Decepticons, the series Armada, Energon, and Cybertron have Power Links mode, where you get things like 2 characters combining with each other, Optimus Prime combining with Jetfire, for instance. So yeah, they combine all the time.
If you're talking about the movie specifically, we do get Devastator showing up like twice. If you're talking about this game, it's called Devastation, and I think there's 2, maybe 3 combiners that show up in it. I know we get
exactly 2.
Devastator and Menasor.
Or what the hell's his name?
Menasor.
Menasor, yeah. Right. Motormaster is a part of him.
Yes.
But
Motormaster should have been Nemesis Prime.
So yeah, I my first introduction to Transformers, like I said, is I was too young to have been a G1 fan and to watch it on TV when it was new, which has always given me a little bit of imposter syndrome, where it's like, you know, I was born in the early 90s, and so G1 would have already been off the air by the time I was born. And the first series that I really noticed or paid attention to was Armada. And what's crazy about that now is Armada is older now than G1 was when Armada was new. and but I had kind of forgotten about Transformers in the couple of years between Armada and the first Michael Bay movie. And then the first Michael Bay movie made me go back and experience everything. So I basically learned about G1 and the G1 movie secondhand after having seen the Michael Bay movie and becoming obsessed with Transformers as a brand. And I watched it shortly after that, and I actually had a bootleg DVD of TF-86 for many years. My DVD of it was not even legitimate, and then I got the 25th anniversary Blu-ray, the remaster, and I think that's what we watched. It was on a 25th or 30th is what they released that for. I think it might have been 30th actually, 2016.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the 30th anniversary Blu-ray, which is not just it doesn't look nicer just because it's a Blu-ray, but it's also a restoration of the film, to where they've actually gone in and restored some of the original frames and touched everything up and just made it look generally a lot nicer. So visually, I think that the movie holds up tremendously, especially if you're watching that 30th anniversary Blu-ray, where some of the visuals are just absolutely gorgeous. And some of the opening shot with Unicron coming in, and there's that star in the foreground, and you see all the wacky colors that it has.
Yeah.
Some really cool backgrounds, like on the junk planet and everything. And there's a little bit of animation inconsistencies here and there, but nothing.
It's G1. You're supposed to expect that by now.
Yeah, but some of the close-up shots, I really love the close-up shot of Megatron looking at Prime, where he's like, "I would have waited an eternity for this. It's over, Prime."
He's got coolant dripping out of his mouth. His left eye is cracked.
Oh, yeah. It's so gnarly, and it's so detailed, and I love it. Yeah, I think that is generally my thoughts on it. I do think that it does deserve to be put on the pedestal that it's put on, even if it's it's objectively probably a bit of a mediocre movie, but it is the fans deserve to cherish it, and I'm glad that there is enough Transformers media out there that's not strictly trying to pay homage to it, that we can have our cake and eat it too.
Yeah. I just got blasted. I agree with that sentiment that it is great, and it is great to have it is okay to have the magnum opus, but you do need some variety in your life as well. I absolutely agree on that point. My take on it, my favorite movie ever, basically. And after coming off the heels of TF1, I actually am of the opinion that you could almost watch TF1 and then go straight to TF86 without seeing anything of the original G1 cartoon and not be too terribly lost. I mean, you wouldn't get a lot of the finer nuances, but if you wanted to do just movies, I mean, considering the Bayverse like to introduce new characters out of nowhere and have no introduction to them in the actual movie itself, this actually wasn't even that rocky of a transition. The only real hiccup.
That's essentially what my wife and one of our friends did. When we saw TF1 in theaters and they saw this, so that literally was their experience with Transformers.
Right. Now there are of course hiccups if you want to get into the nitty gritty about details, but that's for another time. So I really want to talk about the opening scene with Unicron, and I really want to talk about the soundtrack because, more so the scores and less about the licensed tracks, because while, yes, the movie is a sing-along, like you said, I do love the licensed tracks. I love every single one of them. And, it's become a game at this point to where whenever, I've been on road trips with friends going to conventions listening to the Transformers soundtrack, and while the songs are playing, we're quoting the movie in real time. But let's talk about that opening scene. Unicron showing up out of nowhere. It's you walked in to watch Transformers, but then you get this giant cosmic horror robot planet with this haunting music. I don't know what instrument they use. I don't know if it was an organ, but it's just that almost holy sounding music that makes it sound so much larger than life. But it also
definitely an electronic instrument for sure.
Right. It's got that almost the sound you make when you rub the top of a wine glass kind of deal, that kind of resonance. And it's that, so it's got this holy ambience to it, but then it becomes it definitely becomes intimidating, and you get the sense of danger. And then all of a sudden he starts eating a planet, and it's like, if you actually are looking at it now, and you're actually paying attention and appreciating the music, and if you're not just a kid being like, hey, where's Optimus? Then it's a very haunting moment. Like, from a cinematic standpoint. If you're experiencing it for the first time and can appreciate, like, actual cinematic elements. I would say it sets up Unicron fantastically, and it was kind of wasted on the movie, and while I don't remember if he was first introduced in the Marvel comic or in the movie, but because Unicron would go on to be this cosmic horror thing where he was like a multiversal singularity, and he basically is this Lovecraftian nightmare where he's the embodiment of hatred and killing and all that. It was that part was kind of wasted on the movie, but it was still at least partially represented with the soundtrack. Is the best way I can describe my feelings for that. And of course, Orson Welles, an actor who has been described as larger than life, this being his final role, it's a double-edged sword. You can see it as either he represents this, he plays this being that represents, as you said before, inevitability, because Unicron is pretty much like the end of time and such. Or you could see it as his last role was a giant toy commercial. Mm-hmm. You could see it either way. Now, you could probably figure out which one I prefer to see it as, but... And then it is kind of jarring to watch a planet just get ate for breakfast, and then suddenly we're just like, yeah, okay, over on Cybertron. And then it takes place in 2005, which is like 20 years after the second season of the cartoon. And we're just like, yeah, the Decepticons won, basically. They took over Cybertron. We're like, okay, when did this happen? Although, to be fair, the Decepticons pretty much did control Cybertron throughout a lot of the G1 cartoon anyway. Like, Shockwave had things on lockdown, pretty much. You really explore that in the episode with Elita 1 and Chromia and her team and all that. But, yeah, and then you get just absolutely shell-shocked when, less than 20 minutes into the film, like, 4 or 5 of the main characters are dead without so much as a scuffle. Just getting completely destroyed by the Decepticons' very first thing. And I said it before, Brawn getting decked didn't look absolutely terrible because it was just a shot to the shoulder. We've seen him go through worse. And then I think Prowl is the real moment of shock. Because shot through the chest, he's on fire, smoke coming out of his mouth, eyes are glowing orange, and his body turns solid gray. He's just dead. That's the moment when you're just like, oh, so this is what we're doing today. Okay. Just absolute shock. And again, I find myself in a kind of a strange position trying to feel on this one, because I was a kid when I first saw this. I was like 4, 5, 6. But I also hadn't seen the G1 cartoon except for a few scattered episodes that we'd rent from like Movie Gallery or Blockbuster. But I watched the movie first. So I didn't really get that same sense of shock. And I don't really know if I have anything that I could feel the same about, like if I was to watch it today and they pulled the same kind of stunt. Does that make sense? So
yeah, totally.
It's one of those things that's where I want to put myself into the audience's shoes, but I can't fully because I wasn't there. And I don't think there has been an equivalent for me.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I come down on the like imposter syndrome thing, where it's like I will never know what it was like to have been a kid actively watching G1 on TV and then go into the theater like knowing these characters and not knowing what was going to happen to them. Like that's got to be an experience that nobody can possibly relate to unless you were there. But I will say that at least the closest thing to it was our friends watching the movie more or less blind while being somewhat familiar with other Transformers media.
Yeah.
And not knowing like who was going to die or how. There was a funny moment where our friend that was familiar with Transformers, that she could not believe that Starscream would leave specifically Thundercracker and Skywarp for dead when dropping them out of the ship. She was like, "Oh my God, those are your buddies! You're gonna leave them for dead! Oh my God!"
No, Starscream don't care. Starscream don't care about nobody.
Yeah.
To answer, Sir Isaac asked on the subject of it being a toy commercial, if the commercial is good, is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, but it also was a different time. And even today, if you want to just call something a commercial, or you want to make piece of media just to sell a product. Like, there is a right and a wrong way to do it. And that's actually part of what makes the movie so great, is that there was a lot of heart and soul put into it, not just by the writers, but also by the fans who watched the movie. They made it this great cinematic experience that, while it was not exactly well received at the time and did kind of bad at the box office, it took on a life much larger than itself. Like, people formed a legitimate attachment to these characters. And that's why they were so upset when so many of the characters just got killed off like that, because it was the corporate bigwigs who were saying, yeah, we got to kill them off to get them out of the way and not feature them in the cartoon anymore so we can have the new characters put on the toy shelves. So it does go both ways.
And I want to comment on that a little bit too. Where,
yeah, go ahead.
The way that the 80s handled marketing to children with these types of shows was very, very egregious, where they were basically like, legislation had to be passed to regulate the ways in which children were being marketed to via television, because so many of the 80s cartoons were like, we're going to have 1 million characters and 1 million things on screen, and all of them are toys you can buy right now, kind of thing. And it's like, if you look at Transformers, like, G1 has a very, very big cast compared to later series, and it's because all of them were toys. And the same thing with like G.I. Joe. It's like, look at how many millions of different little vehicles are in G.I. Joe, with all different toys you can buy. And I think specifically the law that was passed made it to where you couldn't, like, literally show the product on screen. It had to be, the show had to actually be about something, I guess. And you can see the ramifications of that all the way up until, you know, in the early 2000s, with shows like were adapting anime like Yu-Gi-Oh!, where with Yu-Gi-Oh! They had to modify the way the cards looked on the Americanized version, because the Japanese ones were literally depicting the cards you could buy, and the American version was not allowed to do that anymore.
Yeah, that actually makes a ton of sense. And I thought a lot of the art was just changed for just censorship, which that is true for some of them, but not all of them.
It's both of those things at the same time.
Yeah. Man, I am getting absolutely destroyed by Megatron in this little fight.
It looks like your second round through the fight, you got his health way, 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 way lower.
Yeah, I've gotten
yours, though.
I've gotten him down to like one hit like twice, but then I ran out of ultimate and I couldn't finish him. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that if I can avoid the laser barrier thing, then I can actually win this time. I will try to check up chat after this fight. Live or die. Oh, hello.
I remember something about the story as well I wanted to comment on.
Go ahead.
So the time skip you mentioned, so it because I mentioned that to my wife and our friends, and we watched it. I was like, this movie takes place in the far future of 2005, and I mentioned how Spike was a kid in G1, and he was there with his dad, Sparkplug.
Yeah.
And now you have him as an adult with his son, Daniel, and they thought that was adorable. They were like, "Oh my God!" So he was like a kid in the original. Now he's grown up, and I'm like, "Yeah." And they thought that was like really cute and really well done. And I can imagine being a kid and watching G1 and then watching the movie and seeing grown up Spike and being like, "Oh my God, that's so cool!" Like, and he is like a really well put together character with a bit of commanding presence himself. So like, I really do love his arc, and I do like, time skips and generational skips and stuff like that is always really fun to see in media like that, where the character you've known as like a kid is grown up now and has their own kid and everything.
Yeah, and
though
excuse me. Go ahead.
Even though you could always just interchange Daniel with Kid Spike, and they're not even really all that different.
I'm going to beg to differ on that one, because you said Spike had a commanding presence. Even back in that episode Divide and Conquer, when the other Autobots were scared to go against the Decepticons while Prime was incapacitated, Spike grabbed Jazz's blaster and is like, if you guys won't go fight, I will. And then you see him out there on the battlefield like using this Transformer-sized gun to shoot at the Decepticons.
Yeah.
Okay, let me catch up chat right quick. Anime adaptation of Transformers. Yes, there were several Transformers anime. I think the earliest one was the Headmasters, which is like a Japanese exclusive direct sequel to G1, or it's still part of the G1 continuity. Sir Isaac says there's still people today write it off as just toy commercials, find it kind of annoying. Oh yeah, absolutely. If they're disingenuous about the criticisms, then yes. It all depends on what the piece of media is. Absolutely, I definitely see Transformers as more than just a toy commercial because there actually was a lot of, I said it earlier, passion put into it, and like through the voice actors and the writers and the directors. Is it Duel Masters? No, Duel Masters or something else. That's funny though. Spike's Kid G1 show. Yep. Created by Takara Tomy Hasbro. Yes.
Thing, like what I was describing is like in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, in the Japanese version of the show, when they show a card on screen, it is literally a exact render of the OCG card. Whereas in the English version of the anime, they modify the way it looks to get rid of the border and the text box, so it's just the artwork.
Okay.
Because they weren't allowed to depict the literal TCG card you could go out and buy. It's really, really weird law, and I might have to look it up to see all the little nuance there.
I guess Digimon got away with that because in Digimon Tamers, Tamers actually did get a card swipe mechanic for the Digivices that let their actual real-world collectible trading cards apply effects to their Digimon in battle. But even in the English version, they would show the Japanese version of the card, but the English version of the card was different. Even if it had the same art, like the card layout was different. So I guess they got away with that by using the Japanese version of the card in the TV show footage. I just got ultra comboed. Ouch.
Yeah, I guess so. That's a curious one. I need to go back and rewatch Digimon Tamers. That was like that and Frontier are the two Digimon series that I actually care about.
No spoilers, just in case Bree is listening, because that's the Digimon series I'm going to introduce her to. Sir Isaac says should watch G1 since he liked the movie. Yes, it's all of it is on YouTube right now. You can go watch it under the Hasbro channel. It's a good time. Okay.
If Bree is listening, I get to subject her to the thing that I subjected Michelle to with this movie.
What's that?
So apparently, and I wonder if Bree can vouch for this. So apparently, men are just colorblind. And me and Michelle have been together forever. We don't argue, we don't fight, we don't bicker or anything like that in our relationship.
Right.
But the most annoyed she has ever been with me in our relationship, and I say this somewhat sarcastically because it wasn't like true annoyance, it was just minor annoyance, was a disagreement over what color something was. And it helps that she has the art background, so she knows okay, that color is not just red, that color is scarlet or something like that, you know what I mean, where it's there's a name for that color, we already have a color that's light as red, it's called pink, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
it's salmon. It's obviously salmon.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna get you in another color debate after this movie, and she's like, what the fuck, don't do this to me now. And so the movie ends, and I look over at Michelle, and keep in mind, before we started the movie, we had pizza on the table, and I had my figures on the table. I had the Studio Series 86 Hot Rod Prime, and I had the Kingdom Galvatron and Cyclonus, and I had the TF86 Studio Series Starscream as well. I had all those on the table, so I've got Hot Rod on the table, and so I asked her at the end of the movie, I'm like, what color is Hot Rod? And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what color is Hot Rod? And she's like, well, he's got a pinkish color to him, like a magenta color, right? And I'm like, yeah. Well, what color is the toy? And she's like, oh, you're kidding me. The toy's not the right color. And I'm like, that's right. The toy was never the right color. And he was always like the red and orange.
Like the Classics series, Rodimus was always reddish orange instead of having that maroonish magenta, or not maroonish, but magenta pinkish kind of tone to him. And that color is actually a lot more pronounced in the Blu-ray version. You mentioned you're watching. The version that I mostly watch is the 20th anniversary DVD, and the colors are not as bright, but I find them to be more appealing. But that's just me. So.
Yeah. So, and apparently, in season 3 and onward of G1, Rodimus is a more toy accurate color as opposed to the movie color.
Yeah.
And they never uh, they never corrected it. With the toy was always the same color as the G1 toy. It was not. They never fixed this until recently. I don't think I ever even noticed it until they recently did. I think it might have been like a San Diego Comic Con or a BotCon exclusive or something like that.
Movie color Rodimus.
Yeah, it was a reissue of G1 Hot Rod in correct movie colors, and I was like, "What do you mean correct? Oh my God, you're kidding me! He's pink." And like never really realizing that the toy had it wrong for decades.
Right. Bree's in the chat. She said that we have an argument over what Prime's main color is. Is it red or is it blue?
Well, I guess that depends on which iteration of it.
We're talking G1 Optimus Prime. In robot mode, specifically.
Yeah, well, look, I'm looking at my Studio Series 86 Prime right now, and I guess it depends on, like, how much of... I don't know, because, like, his entire torso and his arms are red. His legs are blue below the knee, and his head is blue.
Yeah. She says that the most dominant color on him is blue. I say it's red. Her reasoning is there is more blue on him. My reasoning is the red is more prominent because it's a more important area. Like, the chest is more important than the legs. Granted, the head is blue, but that's a smaller part than the chest. But anyway, we're not here to debate that. But we do also have...
His primary color is America.
America! But we do sometimes... I'm not going to say we have full-on debates, but she can definitely see a wider color spectrum than I can. She can see it easier than I can. I can see other, like, minute shades. Like, I see people post on Facebook, how many colors do you see here? I was like, I can see, like, very subtle differences. I couldn't tell you what those are, but I see them there. But kind of like with Michelle, Bree is also an artist. She also has the training in the background and all that.
Yep. I was going to say as well, Sir Isaac in chat is saying they like that Hot Rod is pink. Men can wear pink too. That actually leads into the discussion that we had about this after I brought it up. So our other friend said her, like, conspiracy theory was like, she's like, I think that they changed him from pink to red and orange or whatever because they were worried about I guess
toy
assuming that
sales.
the animation was done before the toy. Assuming that that's the case, which I don't know that that's the case, but assuming that the animation was done before the toy, they were like, oh, well, boy's not going to want to play with a pink toy. You know what I mean?
You know, that actually is very spot on, considering that even though I think it was Simon Furman, I have to double check on this, one of the directors fought tooth and nail to get RC added into the movie, and that's what led to us getting Elita 1 in Season 2, because production, blah, blah, blah. But RC didn't get a G1 toy, like, with the release of the movie. She never did. Yep. So, yes, I fully believe that. That's actually, like, whether or not it... Well, no, I believe that is, like, a legitimate possibility. They're like, yeah, this color is more true to the character, but we're going to change it so that boys specifically will want to buy a red car to go along with, like, Sideswipe here that I'm playing as and getting destroyed by, or getting destroyed as, rather than this slightly pinkish Hot Rod. So
yeah. On that note, talking about Hot Rod, do you want to open up the biggest can of worms we're gonna have in this discussion and get out of the way?
Well, let me kind of speed run the next bit. The Autobots on the shuttle got scrapped, and then we get the death of Optimus Prime. Is Hot Rod to blame? No. The higher ups are to blame. Absolutely. That's my take on things.
You okay if I unpack that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is like a big fan base discourse thing. Is Hot Rod responsible for getting Optimus killed in the digest of the movie? And this is like one of those low-hanging fruit fan base conversations. Like, it's the equivalent of did Han shoot first, or why didn't they fly the ring into Mordor with the Eagles? Like, it's the equivalent of that kind of thing. And I think that if you want to make the case that his actions are responsible for getting Prime killed, that's fine. It's fine, because it's all part of his story arc. Like, he is going through the archetypical hero's journey type story, and So he kind of needs to hit all the beats, which includes making a mistake, being redeemed for it later, like, doing something dumb in your naivete. Like, if he got Prime killed, that's fine. Like, Prime will still forgive him. But I think that, and again, like, you get all the whiny fan base stuff where I think people were so, they emotionally overreacted so much to the death of Prime that they, how Rodimus was characterized in the rest of G1 was impacted by that, and people were like, oh, well, Rodimus Prime was a shitty leader and he was constantly living in Optimus's shadow, and like the writers knew it, the characters knew it, like it was integral to the story kind of thing, where the way that he acts is he's constantly trying to live up to Prime, and he thinks he's inadequate, that he can't do it. I'm actually of the opinion that there's a lot of very charismatic moments with Rodimus Prime where he actually is acting like a perfectly fine leader. But I think because of like the meta knowledge of knowing that people were upset about Optimus's death and that they were going to have to bring him back, meant that like Rodimus just never had a chance. He never had a chance to be a good leader, and also season 3 and beyond was so much different that you have Galvatron having lost his mind and being completely off in the swamp somewhere or wherever he ended up. It's a shame, and I think that I still see like G1er memes and stuff like that where people are like, oh, Hot Rod is so stupid, he got Prime killed and he made a shitty leader, blah blah blah, and it's like they had to write back in Optimus because Hot Rod was so bad. It's like this is really kind of a dumb conversation, because it's like why didn't Hot Rod do the other thing instead of the thing he did? Because he didn't, and that's fine, because hero's journey.
Now, I will say, in my video, I do play it up for the camera. I do play the whole thing of, yeah, Hot Rod got him killed. I do ham it up a bit. I don't actually hold that opinion that Hot Rod is a crappy character and got Optimus killed. I do admit that in that moment, the writing was bad, and that's why Hot Rod did the dumb thing of not using his arm-mounted guns to shoot Megatron, because the story needed Prime to die, and that's just how the writers decided to choose to do it. But yeah. I will say...
And
go ahead.
And as you've pointed out on numerous occasions, I think even in that video, it's like, it doesn't make sense to point out like logical inconsistencies with any media based around G1, because like G1 the cartoon took itself so unseriously for so much of its runtime that and had so many ridiculous things like, hey, let's go drive to another continent, or all the other dumb stuff that they do, where it's like why didn't Hot Rod use his wrist guns to shoot Megatron instead of going for the pistol? It's like, are we really going to draw the line here? Because this series has been apeshit since the beginning. Like, when did you start caring about logic and consistency and plot holes and all that? Like, it's very silly to care about that now, when the series has always like not taken itself very seriously at all.
Right. Now, another counterpoint I'd like to make is you want to say that Hot Rod got Optimus killed. The Marvel Comics will disagree with you. The Marvel comic adaptation of the movie, Hot Rod did not lunge for the gun. Megatron got a cheap shot in, and that's what killed him. Hot Rod was nowhere to be found.
Interesting.
So yeah, and Megatron makes the he did, of course, feign his injuries being that severe. The whole "grant me mercy, I beg you," and then because it's an '80s Marvel comic, he does like to have little cheesy dialogue. He says, "Now I will live up to the name of Decepticon by being deceitful," and he gets a cheap shot on Optimus. And why am I struggling so much with this boss fight? It's just like
you can also fire your weapons in alt mode too.
I know, but the flamethrower has like no range on it.
I think you have multiple ranged weapons.
Do I?
You should be able to switch between them with the D-pad, I think.
I feel dumb. Anyway, but even if we do say, yes, Hot Rod got him killed because he did say, Optimus, forgive me, we see Hot Rod going through a full development arc with the movie. Like, when the Autobots are on the shuttle, Cup is over there telling his war stories to the Dinobots. What's Hot Rod doing? He's in the back practicing weapons training. He's like, we need to figure out how we're going to stop this monster that just ate Moonbase 1 and 2. Which, speaking of, how did they not notice Unicron until he was right up on the Moonbase? Where'd that come from? Just, how do you not notice a planet coming toward you?
Yeah, well, again, that also is like, why bother point out the logical inconsistency in that? Because it's also the thing of like, you're inevitably going to be pointing out the sci-fi fallacy of like, okay, space travel takes a very, very, very long time because things are very, very far apart. So if Unicron was just traveling linearly in space from the planet he just ate to Cybertron, it would probably take him years and years and years and years and years to get there if he was just flying there, kind of thing.
Yeah. Another thing, there actually was a comic made called, I think it was called Transformers Deviations, which is an alternate telling of the story where when Cup says, stay away, that's Prime's fight, he actually tackles Hot Rod and prevents him from intervening. Optimus kills off Megatron, and Starscream becomes the new leader of the Decepticons. It's a what-if comic, but honestly, the rest of it is still written like a Hot Rod hate fic. Because everyone is still, like, picking on Hot Rod as being the young kid, and they're talking about how he's insubordinate, how he's saying disrespectful things when he's not, and he, through no fault of his own, like, half the movie cast ends up dying, and they blame him for it. And he ends up sacrificing himself to destroy Unicron in the end, because he was the chosen one of the Matrix and all that. So, like, the idea is there, but it definitely needed a better writer who didn't have a hate boner for Hot Rod, because you could tell that it was just a Hot Rod hate fic.
Yeah. Put a pin in that, because I have a thing about writers having a specific fixation with characters in this movie.
Yeah.
But I'll come back to that. I think it's funny because I need to read more of the Transformers comics. There's so many of them, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to get access to a full series of a print paper comic, and I'm not, physical media all the way. I'm not gonna read a digital version of it. I'm gonna want to own the comic in my hand.
If you can, absolutely, yes.
But the
Eat missiles.
IDW comics, the IDW
Got
comics version of Hot Rod / Rodimus in the modern comics is one of the most beloved characters in Transformers media, and I see a lot of people who are exclusively fans of the comics that just absolutely adore IDW Rodimus.
Yeah, the Blade of Primus.
He seems like a very different character than his G1 counterpart, for sure. But talking about writers that have a specific fixation with characters from this movie, Simon Furman's obsession with G1 Galvatron was pretty hilarious, because he has a moment in the Armada comics where G1 Galvatron basically like crosses dimensions into that comic.
Yes.
It's really stupid. And again, this is the same series where like Megatron gets repainted and just calls himself Galvatron for no reason. So it was like, we're also going to have G1 Galvatron in here because this is my comfort character and I'm obsessed with them, clearly.
Oh, new weapons? Okay. Sosmox says Unicron is just Galactus. Yeah, I can agree with that. Sir Isaac says RC was awesome, and he said she didn't get a toy. I agree. And even with today's toys, like, I was not impressed with the Studio Series 86 RC. Like, my brother gifted me that one, and, I appreciate the gift, but RC deserves a better figure. Like, this one is so brittle, and it's kind of hard to transform, and the hands, like, don't close. Like, the hands are just open. I'm not expecting, like, full fingers, but...
Is that the one where her alt mode is just, like, a shell on her back kind of thing?
That's pretty much every RC toy for, like, the last, 5 years, but yes, this is one of those.
Yeah, I guess that's the problem with her having a bit of the slender body like that. And actually, side note on that, yeah, I like RC as a character as well, and I think that she does have some pretty iconic designs. Our audience of my friends watching it liked her design a lot too. So the 2007 Michael Bay movie toy line had an original design for RC that did not appear in the movie because we get RC, I guess, in the next movie or whatever. We get like it. Isn't that right? Like Revenge of the Fallen has like a weird version of RC.
Yeah, the triplets. Yeah. Did I mention already that I feel like her getting like one voice line and then immediately scrapped like with like 2 shots was like I don't know if I want to call it misogynistic, but it's not a good look for how Michael Bay looks at women. Is like one of the most important.
Seemed like it definitely felt a deliberate choice on Michael Bay's part to be like, oh, the girl character sucks, and like that was, I'm glad we moved past that because Rise of the Beasts has RC and she's great.
Yeah, she's fantastic in Rise of the Beasts. And
Rise of the Beasts RC is literally just G1 RC. It's basically the same character.
Yeah, the only difference is the alt mode, which, I mean, I'm a sucker for the Cybertronian car, but, the motorcycle's really great, too.
Well, what I was going to say is this design for the 2007 toy line, which I'll have to send you a picture of if I can find it. She does transform into a motorcycle, and it works perfectly for her scale because she still gets to have the slender body robot mode, and then gets all those vehicle parts hide away much better than the G1 version where we're just strapping a car to her back and it looks weird kind of thing.
All right. So anyway, continuing on. Where was I? I was talking about Hot Rod had a full character arc. Oh yeah, another thing I wanted to mention was it didn't make a lot of sense from the writing standpoint of the movie, at least in context of Cup is like, here, use a universal greeting. Oh, we almost got eaten by robot alligators. And then they show up on the planet Junk, clearly hostile, like the Junkians are attacking our friends. Hey, what was that universal greeting again? And it turns out this time it worked. In context of the movie, like, that specific action doesn't make a lot of sense, but the fact that he was willing to try diplomacy instead of just going in guns blazing, it's kind of like that scene from Return of the Jedi where Luke walks into Jabba's palace willing to negotiate first instead of just going in, saber swinging. It shows the growth of the character. He actually is willing to attempt diplomacy rather than just violence.
I also think that was done intentionally to be like, to create this reveal where the Junkions are
actually really chill
allies, because up until then they were hostile, and then you're like, oh god, is this going to work? It didn't work last time. Oh, thank god it worked. Like, that's supposed to be your reaction to that scene.
Can we just appreciate, like, I feel like maybe they have like weak logic circuits because they're made of junk, but can we just appreciate how after sharing a small snack of an Energon goodie and then having a dance party, they're willing to help you go kill a Lovecraftian horror, planet-sized robot god. You're just
also,
we gotta go.
You have, an unstoppable cosmic horror Lovecraftian creature that literally gets thwarted by a pile of junk. Like, they literally just launched the fucking junk spiral ship into him, and it works.
Yeah. So it's like they get the Junkians, and he says, "We gotta destroy Unicron." Yes, to kill the Grand Poobah. They're just immediate ride or die. No convincing. They're just like, yeah, sure, we got nothing better to do. And then Unicron could have just eaten Cybertron just like he did with Lithone, but because Galvatron dared to try to use the Matrix on him, he's like, all right, I'm going to make you watch me slowly tear Cybertron apart. Takes on a humanoid form. You will now witness its dismemberment. And he starts slowly crushing it and ripping it apart instead of just eating it in a matter of a few minutes like he normally would have. He made that personal.
Yeah, he really did. He was like, and again, he also probably could have just vaporized Galvatron. We don't know how much power he has over him with his little mind control thing. But I really do. You're right. I think it was kind of this thing of I want you to see everything that you hold dear be destroyed before I destroy you, because I want you to feel how insignificant you are compared to me. And I think that was pretty cool on his part that they did that.
And then he does the dumb thing of actually eating the Matrix. I'm like, yeah, the only thing that can kill you, put it inside you. Although, to be fair, he didn't know the hot rod was going to show up.
He also didn't expect them to survive being eaten.
Yeah, because all the other Decepticons that got ate either ended up in the acid pit or were destroyed, like, in his teeth, like when the Seekers tried to attack him, like from Cybertron.
Yeah. So I don't really consider that like a. And again, it's like.
This is what you question.
Why did character do the thing they did? Because they did.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't really have too much else to say that you either didn't cover or that I haven't covered in talking about this in a different video or a different stream. It was just a lot of the finer nuances and implications of some of the things that you watch in the movies, like Unicron needing to show Galvatron how insignificant he is. He's like, you think you're the great Decepticon commander? You control Cybertron? No. You are nothing. You are not worth my time. I literally created you out of just a need for someone to go get the Matrix, because I have to eat planets to fuel myself. I'm gonna smack on your moons while I wait, but...
Which, it does feel a bit contrived that, because as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Matrix of Leadership was a thing until this movie. I don't think it was ever mentioned in G1.
In the cartoon, no. In the comic, it was mentioned as the Creation Matrix, and it was held within Optimus Prime's head, and it was a plot MacGuffin a few different times, but then when the movie came out, they decided to redesign it to make it look more like the one from the movie. And you saw the... did I show you the Legend or Generation Selects Galvatron figure that's like more G1 toy color accurate?
Yeah.
So the Matrix it comes with is like a neon green. That is to fit how the Matrix looks in the comic, because in the comic they use Galvatron's toy colors instead of cartoon colors. So it did kind of exist, but not as a physical item until the movie.
Yeah, so my point with that is you know, it does seem a little bit contrived that they're introducing this magical MacGuffin plot device thing at the same time that...
Robot Satan shows up.
Well, the fact that Unicron is specifically saying, this is the only thing that can stand in my way, and it's like, how does he have knowledge of that? You know, what is this thing's legacy? And again, it's not really, to me, it's not like thematic that it is a weapon, so to speak. It is just this it's the thing that makes you a prime kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
and on that kind of subject, it does make me wonder how in the sequel to TF1, if we ever get one, how are they going to justify the energy crisis that sparks the rest of the war? Because in most continuities that I'm aware of, at least if they're G1 adjacent, the war starts because of an energy crisis. Like, that is a big plot point. So are they going to have to kill the core of Primus like in War for Cybertron? And does this thing also kill Unicron like it does in G1, or what?
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest, is just go the War for Cybertron route of, like, the Cybertron does not stop producing Energon until Megatron fucks with it in some way, you know, introducing Dark Energon to the core.
Which actually thematically would fit perfectly with that version of Megatron, because he's got the whole the Primes betrayed me aspect going on. This is the symbol of the Primes, and it's like, oh, even the core of Cybertron itself rejected me. I'm gonna, like, completely uproot this. Like, going just full evil. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure.
Which, on that note, I actually don't, I don't really require... Do we get a sequel to TF1? I think it's fine the way it is, and it actually is a shame. It is a huge shame that the movie did not do better at the box office, but what's funny, if the numbers I found are actually accurate, I meant to mention this earlier, but TF1 actually did better at the box office than TF86 did.
Which does make a ton of sense, because, I mean, now, like, we have more Transformers fans than just kids, so yes.
Yeah, and because I think from what I saw, TF86 had about a $5 million budget, and it made, I think, $5.8 million at the box office, so it barely broke even.
Yeah.
It probably actually lost money if marketing is anything to go by, so it definitely is which is actually not too unheard of for a lot of 80s movies that are considered cult classics to this day. Like, there are a lot of cult classic movies from the 80s that were bombs in the box office that are now profitable because of royalties and pop culture and merchandise and stuff like that. A lot of a lot of John Carpenter stuff, like even The Thing was a bomb at the box office, and now it's considered a classic kind of thing. But uh, so it, and as much as the fans really hated how dirty TF1 was done in terms of the marketing and everything, TF1 was far, far from the biggest flop of 2024. Oh my God, were there some movies that did like disastrously in terms of losing money for their studios.
Yeah, I believe
so
it.
at least the fact that like TF1 made double its budget back is pretty impressive compared to some of these movies that like lost their studios like hundreds of millions of dollars. So, but trying to think if there was anything else I had to say about this movie.
I'm trying to think of something else to add. I don't want to. What? Go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't want to exactly call the G1 cartoon saccharine, so to speak, because I mean it is like violent and there is like fighting and all that. It's not like Care Bears, but again, going off the thing of no one had permadeath. Like I think we only even saw like severe like robot destruction a handful of times. Like one of the Insecticons got blown to pieces. Prime had a near-death experience, and then watching like the Transformers experience injuries in the movie that they would have survived no problem in the cartoon. That probably is what was just so shocking about it.
Yeah.
Like I should have brought that up earlier. I'm trying to think of things that I didn't cover previously to kind of round things out here.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because this movie is so beloved that there is a lot of other media, a lot of other videos out there talking about it. So I'm trying to remember what website made the video that I watched back in like 2007 when I first got into Transformers, because that would have been my first ever experience with the film, and it was the one that talked about how they were like, oh, I can't believe the balls this movie had to kill off characters. Like, I'll have to go back and find out what that because it wasn't like Classic Game Room, but it was like a very old established YouTube channel or website that did that review. Yep. I'll have to try to find it, but that one lives rent free in my head.
I'm honestly really surprised that Doug Walker hasn't done a full review of the movie yet as the nostalgia critic. Like, he did one for like the pilot episode, and he's done one for the G.I. Joe movie where he made reference to the Transformers movie because they're like, no, you can't kill Duke, we're still mourning the death of Optimus Prime. Like, he made the joke, but he still hasn't done a review of this movie, and I'm like, why? Why not?
I mean, he can leave it well enough alone as far as I'm concerned.
I watched this stuff in a while, but I'm just kind of surprised that he hasn't yet. That seems like something that would have been right up his alley.
I think he deliberately avoided it because he made like that top 11 whatever video about like the tragic deaths and didn't mention the death of Optimus Prime, and everybody rioted in the comments.
Really?
And then
I remember that.
I think he probably explicitly went with the G.I. Joe movie for that reason, so he could reference the death of Optimus Prime again, but not have to talk about TF-86 specifically. But I was gonna say there's that guy, Pointless Hub, who has been doing some nice retrospectives on the live action movies. He finally did a video on TF-86 to kind of cap off the whole thing. And it's a pretty well-made video, and he talks about just the absurdity of G1, the series. And I think that he kind of cherry-picks some particularly ridiculous scenes in G1 to really kind of illustrate his point for comedy purposes.
Yeah.
But it's a good video. It's over an hour long. My friend that is an established Transformers fan that we watched it with the other night for the first time, she watched that video immediately after our screening and then linked it to me like yesterday, and I was like, yeah, I've seen this. I watched this guy's videos. He doesn't have like the most intellectual points or anything, but there's a certain degree of honesty to it that I like, and that's why those videos do well, I feel like. But then H Bomber Guy, prolific video essay creator, did a video called My Transformers Midlife Crisis, which is him talking about his relationship with G1 and the 86 movie, which I think you can definitely relate to, because he's roughly the same age that we are, so he also has like the G1 imposter syndrome, and he watched the movie on VHS as a really young kid.
Same.
And he had this the way that he describes like his existential horror when it comes to Unicron is really well done, and I kind of had my own take on that when I talked about Unicron in the Armada game video, where it's like Unicron is this larger than life force of nature thing, but it also like makes you feel small and insignificant, and it's like this it's useful for a like coming of age story like Hot Rod's story to be like there are forces out there that are greater than what you will ever be able to overcome, and you kind of have to
you got to face it whether you're ready to or not.
Yeah, but it's also like trying to think of the right words here, where it's like certain things can feel impossible when you have never had to overcome something like that before, and it's like it's almost like the fear of growing old, where it's like you look at death and the inevitability of death, and it's this big all-consuming thing, and conquering it is not like beating it in a fight, it's being like, I'm not afraid of this anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's like probably an unintended theme of the movie, but one that I think still works, and it works well in its favor.
Yeah. I got a couple more things I could say about Hot Rod and Rodimus's character arc if we want to delve into Season 3 a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I do agree that the writers kind of deliberately made Hot Rod, or, well, Rodimus Prime, as he's dubbed at the end of the movie, they did make him, like, constantly living in Prime's shadow, and he would not let that go for a long time. And when they found Optimus later on, but he was a robot zombie controlled by the Quintessons, he immediately handed the Matrix back over to him. And he became Hot Rod again. But it was with Optimus's blessing, when he got his spark back from the Matrix, that he's like, you know, I guess I do actually have to lead the Autobots now, because Prime gave me his blessing, and this was my responsibility entrusted to me by the Matrix. And more than that, you also have the episode The Burden Hardest to Bear, where he lost the Matrix, and he actually hesitates on going to get it back. But when he sees like what it's doing to Scourge and how the Autobots are lost without a leader who has the Matrix, he decides to accept that Hot Rod needs to stay in the past. He's grown up. He is Rodimus Prime now. He has to accept that responsibility. Even though he really didn't want to, he wanted to be the party guy. He has accepted, you know, it's time to grow up. It's time to be the leader that Prime entrusted me to be. Whether or not the kids at home actually like me for it.
Yeah.
And I actually think that Hot Rod and Rodimus did have something of a complete character arc. And even Ultra Magnus did. And I actually really like the character of Ultra Magnus, and I really honestly identify with him in a lot of ways. Because it's like... I feel like...
I was going to say as well that I think it's just ridiculous to expect perfection out of Hot Rod, or out of Rodimus, when he just became the leader.
Right.
Where it's like...
Optimus has millions of years.
Yeah, luckily we get the origin story of Optimus in TF1 to see kind of his arc, where he was a bit of a dork and a goofball as Orion Pax and was not perfect, and there was a very substantial portion of his follower base that didn't respect him either. And with G1 Optimus Prime, it's like he was this like always calm, always stable. He always had the right answer. He always had the solution. You could always trust him. You know, he always had his act together kind of thing. And he is this rock hard role model leader. It is just kind of like, you know, this is your cool dad you can go to for advice kind of character.
Yeah.
And so the idea of being like, you know, Rodimus being like, well, now I've got to figure it out for myself. I don't have my mentor to look up to, is, you know, that is his arc. He's not trying to be perfect immediately, and it is just kind of like, I'm sure all of us who are, you know, adults can relate to the idea of being like in your 20s or even your 30s and still having this like this weird growth of like, I'm not a kid anymore, I'm an adult and I'm figuring it out for myself, and how did my parent or my mentor or my role model know what to do in these situations? How did they figure it out?
Yes.
So yeah, it's just ridiculous to hold Rodimus to that standard, because to your point, Prime had been the leader for so long, he had his act together.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it definitely wasn't fair to hold him to the same standard, but again, that's just one of those things that happens in 80s cartoon movies and TV shows. It's not just a thing of, oh, hey, he's new, so he's bad. It's a thing of, again, as much as we hate to admit it, the original Transformers cartoon was sold to peddle the toys. And it's like, this is who we have to work with now. We're going to try to make it work, whether or not it does or not. And that's why Hot Rod taking over did definitely feel rushed, and he didn't have the experience. But the role of leader was forced upon him by Unicron's attack on Cybertron. So that's why he was put in the role, and whether or not he was the best choice, I also think Ultra Magnus would have been a better choice because he had more experience than Hot Rod did. But that's not how the writers and the directors decided to run with things. So no, it doesn't entirely make sense.
That, like, I do find it funny as well that like even Prime in his right mind was like, I am knowingly picking Ultra Magnus because I think he's the most qualified, but the Matrix itself disagreed.
Right.
Where it's like, you know, imagine Prime coming back and be like, what the fuck? What do you mean Ultra Magnus is not the next Prime?
I mean, I guess when Prime Spark joined the Matrix, because he's the one who dubbed Hot Rod Rodimus Prime there at the end. So I guess it's when he got in there, Alpha Trion's like, yeah, no, sorry, bro.
Yeah, I'll have to find, there's a super, super old video that was a really well-made skit.
The Rude Awakening of Optimus Prime.
Yeah, it's so good, dude. Like that, I need to rewatch that. It's probably been well over a decade since I've watched that.
Yeah, the video's like 15 years old, or at least the upload on YouTube is. So.
Yeah, it's probably close to 20 at this point, because I know it was posted in 2007 when I was in my big Transformers hype craze after the first Michael Bay movie.
I remember something that I wanted to say about the Battle of Autobot City. One of the reasons that Prime died on the operating table is that the Decepticons killed off the two main medics and scientists first. Ratchet was one of the first ones to go. Wheeljack died off screen. They're the ones who managed to patch up Optimus during the episode Divide and Conquer. They were dead. The best you got from here is Perceptor.
Yeah.
So yeah, kill the medic first, and then they got no one to work with.
Yeah, which is, I guess, just a coincidence, but it is undoubtedly true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just those videos live rent free in my head so much, where it's like, you ran this fucking organization to the ground, Rodimus.
Give me the Matrix back.
Yeah. And even just like the background like dub actors, it almost sounds, it's a pretty convincing G1 sound alike, where it's like, you have Skylinks there or whatever. Yeah. And Optimus like, you brought me back to life. It was an
accident. There's another skit from a long time ago that it's actually delisted currently. I found it through a different YouTube comment. There's like someone dubbed over Galvatron coming back in season 3 with one of the old Bugs Bunny World War II propaganda cartoons. It was like hair and hair or something like that, and the video was called Nazi Cons. And it was Cyclonus getting beat up by Galvatron, like with that audio synced over it.
Oh, well, I definitely understand why it's not not visible to be viewed right now, then.
Yeah. YouTube ain't what it used to be. Like, the video itself, like, wasn't anything bad. It was just those are trigger words for the YouTube algorithm now, so.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, but you could maybe make an argument about the intent of the person posting it, but
perhaps
I would have to see it to myself to make a judgment call on that.
Well,
and not assume anything.
Yeah, it was using satire after all. Like, it was the Bugs Bunny satire episode, you know. Yeah, but that's a different discussion for a different time. But I think that's all that I wanted to bring to the table for this discussion. You hit pretty much all the other points that I wanted to hit. Soundtrack, fantastic. I thought the writing, like, yes, it did feel disjointed in between its, like... Honestly, I feel like the weakest act was the second, because it goes from Autobot versus Decepticon, typical Saturday morning episode, but with violence and death, to set piece to set piece to set piece, and then suddenly we are at the climax. Here's, Unicron attacking Cybertron. And
the pacing of it was like very, 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 very fast. That was something that Michelle commented on as well, where she's like, everything is moving extremely quickly, and we're moving from scene to scene really fast.
Yeah.
And I feel that as well on some of my repeat viewings, where like I find it really fast how quickly we transition from scene to scene. And maybe that's just like, again, you kind of get a certain idea in your head of what this movie's going to look like from watching clips on YouTube or whatever. But how quickly it cuts from like the Dinobots fighting Devastator to Prime getting ready to go on his murder spree, and the touch start playing like that.
Yep.
That transition just feels very quick, and I wonder if it's just misremembering the movie or whatever.
No, it's
also there. You'll appreciate this. I noticed a little cameo in that scene too, where it's Sunstreaker on the ship with
Optimus, and he was there earlier repairing the road with Cup earlier in the movie.
Yeah, well, he doesn't do anything. Like, he doesn't do anything the entire movie.
Neither does Hound. Neither does Hound. They're just chilling out there.
Yeah, he doesn't say anything. He doesn't do anything after that scene. I just happened to notice it on this particular viewing.
Have you seen like the fan restoration attempts that are going on, where they're like animating scrap storyboards and working on making a full length cut, where they're bringing back characters who were either glossed over or weren't in the, like a bunch of season 2 characters that weren't in the movie at all? They're just
no.
You haven't heard about that? The project is slow going. I don't think there's been an update in like over a year, but a lot of the restorations they have done for fan work, it's very well done. Like they've taken storyboards and have put some animation to it. Like there's supposed to be a scene where Devastator rips his way through another door, and he fights against Ultra Magnus, Red Alert, and a couple others. Like Magnus comes in his car carrier form, offloads a bunch of Autobots. They unload on Devastator and blast him apart. The Constructicons then start shooting at the Autobots while they're running away. And then the camera pans over, and that's where Megatron is. And then the camera pans up, we see Prime standing right behind him. And there was also, the reason he didn't actually have his blaster with him was that he got tackled by Blitzwing and Skywarp. Or maybe it was... he got tackled by Blitzwing, and it was either Skywarp or Astro Train, and they knocked his gun away from him. That's why I was like laying over there in a pile, and he had to like fight them off with his bare hands. And then there's supposed to be a scene where Megatron says, "Why throw away your life so recklessly?" It's supposed to have who's the blue conehead? Dirge, I think.
Yes.
Dirge tries to get the jump on Optimus. Optimus backhands him, grabs him by his ankle, and slams his head into the ground. And then you see him raising up. That's a question you should ask yourself, Megatron. On the one hand, that absolutely breaks the pacing of the badass scene and doesn't sync up with the music. Like, the music would be, like, not as well implemented because we're here for the hype. But it also is just hilarious to me how Prime just doesn't even acknowledge that Dirge is trying to assassinate him. He's just like, I'm talking here. This is between me and Megatron. Here, you get to get your head buried like an ostrich. It's silly, and I can understand why that specifically was cut. But there's a fan work going on to try to restore a bunch of the deleted scenes and deleted concepts and all that.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
I think on that note, it is after 8. I am hitting a bit of a wall where I've got to get up super early for work stuff tomorrow. So I think I'm gonna dip here.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm probably just gonna keep going on here until I beat this level.
Yeah, I think we hit everything we needed to hit, so I think it was a productive conversation for the most part.
So we'll do this again whenever we eventually get another Transformers film. Hopefully the G.I. Joe one eventually. I did hear that Hasbro, after TF1 failed to impress at the box office, Hasbro's not financing the movies anymore, so I don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah, I'm a little curious about that too, because I was worried about that all the way back when Bumblebee came out, because Bumblebee has all of these studio labels on there, and there was like specifically 1 or 2 labels, like I think one of them is like All Spark Studios or something like that, where it's like okay, are we making a entire studio just to make these Transformers movies?
I mean, we saw what happened.
Like,
we saw what happened when they did that with Halo, didn't we?
yeah, but that was still people from the old guards,
From
like,
Bungie,
still
yeah.
making the same games, kind of thing. But it didn't sit right with me as far as like this seems like investing a lot of money in something that's not guaranteed. And look where we are now. So,
I mean, again, TF1 I think was the best Transformers movie we've gotten since '86, but again, it didn't do well at the box office because honestly, I feel like we've been getting some Transformers fatigue. I guess the closing note I want to go out on with this is for as great of a movie as TF86 is, I do kind of agree with your sentiment from the beginning of the stream, or from like, within the first hour, that we as fans are getting a little tired of the callbacks and the novelty. Like, we would appreciate either something completely new, because they try to reboot the franchise like every 3 years or so. It's like, while a callback is fine, we don't need the exact same story and the exact same quotes and exact same plot beats rehashed in every new piece of media that comes out. Like, some of the other most iconic pieces of Transformers media did something different, even if they were like directly linked. Like, Beast Wars had its own identity despite it being G1 like adjacent, and Armada has its fans. I really want to go back and rewatch Robots in Disguise 2001, but of course, Transformers Victory has its fans too. Like Victory, Super God, Master Force. I haven't seen those, but I know they have their own fan base because we get a bunch of people who are always asking for a new version of Star Saber toy to get released. So, Hasbro, if you're listening, feel free to do something new. Like, we love the original, but there is such thing as too much of a good thing.
It's weird because for the first like 2 decades of Transformers as a franchise, it was always doing its own thing in every iteration. And then I feel like specifically after the first Michael Bay movie, excluding animated and now TF1 from the equation, it's almost like everything post 2007 has been G1 pandering and references.
I mean, they even used the iconic "One shall stand, one shall fall" in the first Bayverse film.
Yeah, or even down to Prime being played by Peter Cullen in the live action movie it feels like almost like a direct, like, we wanted to nail this source material kind of thing. But yeah, it's like the first 2 decades it was always doing its own thing, but now we've had so much time of, it crossed over this event horizon of now it's a nostalgia brand where we have to constantly be paying homage to the original, and I do think people are just tired of that. So it is cool when it does something different, and I whether or not they will be rewarded for it or not, we'll have to see. But I think the unfortunate thing is that, and I've said this for years now, is that Transformers is not a franchise being kept alive by kids.
It's not.
This is a franchise that is being kept alive by adult toy collectors. And so G1 fans and now our Armada Unicron trilogy fans are the people actually keeping the lights on with this franchise and the ones buying the toys. And I'm not saying like don't make something to pander to kids, but it's like it's kind of a shame that I want there to be this series or this game or something that that kids absolutely love.
They'll fall head over heels for it the way we did for our series.
Yeah, and I just don't feel like anything has really not since the Michael Bay movie, the first one, has really felt like there was a generation of kids that could get into Transformers. Some people started with TF Prime, I understand, but other than that, it just feels like I said, the majority of people that are Transformers fans are adult collectors, and that there's not a generation of kids. And I think it changes in generation and what kids are into these days, because I'm of the opinion where I just don't think kids are buying toys anymore.
They're not. They're buying iPads now.
Exactly. And if you look at the decrease in retail allocation, like square footage for toys and stuff like that, it is significantly shrunken since we were kids. I remember when the 2007 Michael Bay movie came out, there was basically an entire aisle for or at least it was probably at least 12 12 feet of retail space for that toy line, whereas now if you go to Walmart, Target, whatever, it's usually just like a few pegs.
Yeah, it's like a third of an aisle is maybe what you get.
It's like less than a 4-foot section, and I think that's just because, you know, the people buying Studio Series and Legacy and all that are adults. The kids aren't interested in these anymore.
What I'm really hoping is that with them giving us like Studio Series Gamer Edition, War for Cybertron figures, and Transformers Devastation figures, which, why doesn't Optimus come with this blaster for that one? But anyway, I'm really hoping that if they're doing these figures, I'm really hoping that that means that we'll have a re-release of these games soon so that kids can enjoy them. Like, maybe the licensing will pull through and we might get a re-release of Devastation on digital platforms. We'll get a War for Cybertron either remaster or just relist. And that would help things because kids still like video games, even if they don't like toys as much as they used to. So
yeah, and even then, I don't think that's going to really be enough because I think the vast majority of the people who would buy that re-release
would be the adults who played it originally.
People like us as well, where it's like, and especially War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron. As much as I love them, they are 7th gen games, in design, and so I was really hoping that. What the hell is the name of that game? The Transformers game that was in development that I think has basically been scrapped. Is it Reactivate? Is that what it was called?
I don't remember hearing that name at all.
Let me see here. I'm going to do a quick Google search.
Now, on the subject of War and Fall of Cybertron, I think that I will try to play Fall of Cybertron here soon in my downtime, and I will reserve Devastation for the next stream, because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, it's basically Metal Gear Rising with Transformers, and since I finished Metal Gear Rising and we need footage of this for a future video project we're collabing on, this will be my next solo stream project.
Yeah. Yeah, Transformers Reactivate, I'm going to send you the link to the website for it, because it looks like it's still kind of a thing, but there was basically one trailer for this, and then they said it was being put on hiatus and was delayed. So I don't think we're actually getting this game at all, but this would be the kind of thing that would bring new people into the series.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's about all I have to say. I'm gonna dip. I've really got to use the bathroom. So enjoy the rest of the stream, and I will talk to you later.
Well, thanks for coming on here, and I'll be in touch when we can do this again.
Awesome. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Good night, buddy.
All right.
All right, chat. It's just us now. Yeah, I don't know if this game is more difficult than I realized, or if I just suck at it because I wasn't even that great at Metal Gear Rising. But this feels like one of those games to where it's easy to get punished. I noticed that, like, I make one mistake, and it all comes falling apart. Like, each one of these, like, little boss sections has taken me multiple tries, and, well, again, I do find it a little bit easier than Metal Gear Rising. The vehicle aspect of things does help, and I can just spam this over and over again if I get enough distance. Health drops seem to be a bit more frequent in the boss fights, which is good. But I also don't have, like, blade mode or anything as far as I'm aware. I also haven't been able to listen to the tutorials of the game because I had the audio completely muted. I'm going to turn it back up here in a sec when I don't need to dodge an attack. Ow. Then that happens. Oh yeah, I forgot I can... Oh wait. Yeah, there we go. I keep forgetting I can do that. There we go. I misread the L1 up there as LT, like left trigger. That's Xbox. I'm playing on PS4. Oh, hey Master Chief. Yeah, sorry I wasn't overly active. We actually talked before the stream, and we said that we need to have our own moments to say our piece before we try to talk over each other, because last stream it got a little bit disorganized, and we, like, kind of both lost our train of thought when we were talking about the Bayverse films and TF1, so we were trying to keep it a little more consolidated this time. Ow. Really fell behind on the chat for that, but, you know, it is what it is. Alright, unmute that. Alright, I'm going to give this fight, like, 2 more tries, then after that I think I'm just going to return to the Ark, because I can do that. Besides Bayonetta, Nier Automata, Metal Gear Rising, Platinum Games. Yeah, I think like it wasn't Platinum Games, the studio, but some of the people who were like one of the lead developers, I think, worked on the Devil May Cry series, and he was one of the founders of Platinum Games, I think is what it was. There's a problem with Platinum Games. Okay, what is that? Also, did I turn it up too loud? I can't actually hear it on my end. I love how Prime just pulls a trailer out of nowhere and just body slams them. Ow. Yeah, him. Oh, that's not good. Yeah, I've heard that a lot of companies have been having layoffs lately. The current state of gaming, I suppose. So many game companies are like, if this game doesn't sell, you know, X million copies, then we're just going to lay off a bunch of people and basically shut down a little sub-studios here. Which CJ covered it in his Transformers retrospective, like game retrospective series. That's kind of what happened to High Moon Studios, the guys who made War and Fall of Cybertron. Eventually, they just kind of got sent to the Call of Duty mines. That's the no, get off me. I can keep my distance long enough to get my ultimate meter charged. I might be able to take them this time. Of course, it doesn't help when they decide to just close the gap. Okay, so it comes in from behind and actually hits them when they're right behind me. That's really cool. Yep. No. Oh. Aha. It's not Bone Crusher. Bone Crusher was in the last fight. Mixmaster and Scrapper? Some of the Constructicons I have trouble remembering who's who. I just remember they said Bone Crusher on the previous one. He had a drill for an arm. I don't recall him having that in the G1 cartoon, though. I'm not complaining. I just don't remember that specifically. It kind of reminded me there's one scene in like the first episode where Ironhide just pulls a drill out of nowhere. Oh, punch me in the foot. Oh, my HP's back. Nice. There we go. You know, for all that I played Metal Gear Rising, I complained so much that there wasn't a dodge mechanic. Now I have a dodge mechanic and I'm not even using it properly. I missed him. Just shot him in the face. Didn't even finish him with an axe. Crash 4 got sent to the COD mines. Yeah.
Shut down the sub-generator.
Alright, so I had to fight all 6 of the Constructicons individually, and I'm probably going to fight Devastator next. Actually, wait, that bridge. I remember watching a cutscene. I think I'm about to have to fight Blitzwing. Like, I remember there was, okay, I can go down there. Can I check the map? Like, the camera panned over there, so, I don't know. like back before Metal Gear Rising memes were like really popular within the last couple of years, someone named like Sergeant Gerbil Hamster or something like that, he made a bunch of Transformers Devastation video, like boss fight videos, putting the Metal Gear Rising soundtrack over it. And I remember the fight with Blitzwing took place after you get off a bridge, so I remember that was a thing. Alright, so which way do I go? Like, the beacon is over here. Okay. Well, I'm gonna pop back up here real quick to see. Okay, yeah, I think I've already been... no. I think I've already been over here. Finish spoiler... for TF1? Yeah. Yeah, we started talking about that for a bit. Sorry, Bree and I were on a trip for like the last week. From Thursday to Monday, we were like, it's the first time in a while we've gotten taken a vacation, just the two of us. So we were just kind of occupied with that. It was a great fun time. Really needed it. But yeah, we'll talk on Discord after. There we go. That's what I need. Yeah, enter the Ark, and the game should have autosave. I think that's what it said. So yeah, there we go. Basic twin blaster. Freeze missiles, nice. Basic spread shot. Burn grenades. Alright. I think that will about wrap it up. Yeah, I'll take care of getting new moves and all that next time. I'll probably actually replay the first, like, intro off screen, so that way I can get the story and audio for it. But I'll continue this during the next stream. Actually, next time I think I'm going to go back and redo the... Or not redo, but do the DLC missions for Metal Gear Rising. And then I'll keep going with Transformers Devastation after that. So yeah, thank you all for coming, everybody. Thank you for listening to us ramble about a movie that's been talked about to death. And we'll do this again some other time soon. So, hope you all have a good night. One Decepticon soldier's name was Blackout, riding outdated military helicopter was MH-53. Oh, talking about from the first Michael Bay film? That's the only time I recognize the name Blackout when it comes to Transformers. I remember he was like at the very beginning of the movie. Alright, later everybody.